you're probably doing so much that you're not doing certain things well.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you should probably be doing less and doing it better.
Absolutely. That's usually the case.
Right.
I mean,
well, and because as you said that, I was like, yeah, one day off a month would be hard for me. It's because my days are packed with calls.
Right.
So I had to would have to take all those calls and try and redistribute them. But all the other days are also packed with calls.
Right.
So I would end up with 7, 8 p.m. days, right?
Yeah. The key is scheduling it out. If you schedule it in the future and you just hold it, you find places to put the other stuff.
Yeah.
You just can't do it spur of the moment.
Want a hug?
Quinn, yeah, I would like.
They're made to actually hug back, so that's why it feels so comforting.
If I just put them,
and they're heavy enough for adults to use. Yeah,
that's nice. What's up? Welcome back to Dark Mode, the business comedy podcast where we talk with entrepreneurs and comedians about business, work, tech, all the stuff. Today I've got two really amazing guests with me. I've got Evan Dash from Dash.
Hi.
You try to make it easy to remember. I like it. Tell me a little bit about Dash.
Well, it's my last name also, so it's easy for me to remember, which was most important.
Yeah, you're I will forget the name of my company if I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, so we make small kitchen appliances like waffle makers, blenders, juicers, etc., and we did that after a career in corporate retail.
Nice. Cool. And I have also Marina. I'm sorry, I should have asked you before. Will you say your last name for me?
Khidekel.
Yeah. Marina Khidekel. Hugimals is the brand. And before that, have a impressive career in journalism and in the media. Tell me a little, why Hugimals? Why leave that to start your own thing?
Well, that's a longer story than just an introduction, but there's a through line in my career. Even as a journalist, I did service journalism to help people live with less anxiety and more joy, and Hugimals is an extension of that in physical form. We make weighted plush for adults and kids to ease anxiety and help with sleep.
Cool. We also have Quinn the koala.
Quinn is here participating.
Silent. So strong silent type. So Quinn the koala, one of your Hugimals.
Yes.
How many do you have? Or what animals do you have?
Hugimals is a 2-year-old company. There are 6 Hugimals, which are our anchor products, are weighted stuffed animals. They weigh 4.5 pounds. They're weighted all over, so it feels like it's hugging you. Quinn is one of our recent ones. We also have Sam the sloth, Charlie the puppy, Emery the elephant, Frankie the cat, and our newest, which is Harper the pig. So we also have weighted pillows as well, heart-shaped pillows called heart-to-hug pillows, and more stuff coming soon.
I don't know if we don't need to get into this, but I'm just saying, you said all of them are gender neutral names.
Yes.
I have an issue with some of those names as gender. I think we're gender neutraling too many names. That's my hot take about names. You know what I'm saying?
You're allowed to have that opinion.
Okay. you're wrong, but you're allowed to have it. Also, we didn't say what Dash was. You want to give kind of your elevator pitch on Dash?
Yeah, I mean, we make fun small appliances for younger generations typically, but we're sold in stores all around the world. We do business in about 70 countries. We sold about half the business to a large public French company about 4 years ago, but my wife Rachel and I still run the company, and we're sold in Williams-Sonoma, Target, QVC, Costco, a lot of other big stores.
That's awesome. How long were you doing it before you had to exit? Or was it a full exit? Or are you on
No. So we sold,
or how's it?
Yeah, we sold 55%, and we still run the company. We're a separate entity, but we have the resources of an $8 billion company now.
Gotcha.
So we've grown incredibly quickly. We did the whole thing with taking on way too much debt, growing way too fast. But the ride's been awesome.
Well, the money was there was a lot of free money there for a minute, so I think that a lot of companies did that. Did you? So do they cover like payroll team, that kind of thing, or do you guys still have that?
We still do everything.
Nice.
Yeah, we still do everything. We just can now tap into their 40 factories around the world, their financing, their expertise, patent portfolio. I mean, they have been dream come true partners. Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, the thing I want to talk about today is work-life balance. Is work-life balance a myth? Is it real? Should we even try to have it? If we should try to have it, where do we find it? Like, is it between the couch cushions? Where do we even look for it? I want to kick it off with this. So, there's a NYU professor, Scott Galloway, who said that when he asks his students what they expect to be earning, so these are college-age students, 18 to 22-year-olds, college-age students, what they expect to be earning by the time they're 35, most of them say they expect to be in the top 1% of income earners. And these are NYU students, so there's, probably a certain level of expectation there, or a certain level of high achiever, overachiever there, but they expect to be in the top 1% of income earners. So that's around $750K a year. That's what they think they're going to be earning by the time they're 35. That's 90% of them expect that. And then when he asks them what's sort of most important to them in their life and, just generally, usually they say balance. I don't want to live at work. I want to be able to go home on the week, have a life outside of work. I think we're all chuckling at that. We're all probably past that 35 point or around that 35 point, close to there. Let me start here. Did you guys think that when you were 18, like if you think back to 20-year-old yourself, like, did you think that was what it was going to look like in 15 years?
No, not at all.
No.
I mean, it was the opposite. I mean, I was telling somebody last night, I'd get into work at 6:30 in the morning and I'd leave at 8:30 at night. I mean, there was no balance other than balancing the different tasks that I did during the day at work.
Yeah. When you were when you were younger, or
when I was younger, coming out of college, so I was firefighter, which was a beautiful thing. I mean, to me, that was the ultimate work-life balance because your shift ends and you're basically off work.
That is nice. You're not like stressed about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the last time
Did
that
I get
happened.
those deliverables?
Nobody seeking me out. But then when I went into corporate retail, that's where work balance just totally ended.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I never thought that I was missing something in my life. I enjoyed what I was doing and was working really hard, saw a path to success. And I always felt like the people way above me on the ladder, they had the work-life balance. They had the families and a vacation house, and I aspired to that. But I knew that in order to get there, it was, grind every day.
So your perception was they had the work-life balance. Do you think they actually did?
More so than I did.
Yeah.
But no, I think it was probably more perception.
Yeah. I think they are further, they're older, right?
Yep.
So they've got the families but they still work, way too much. And their families are like, oh, you're our dad?
Yeah.
We forgot what you look like.
Yeah. I remember a time when I went to my boss's apartment and she had a Christmas party and there was a hallway in her Manhattan apartment where I could stand in the middle and I couldn't touch either wall. And I was like, this is a hallway.
That's pretty big for Manhattan.
Yeah, right. And I was living in a one bedroom where we put up a wall and we had a guy living on a couch and somebody else living in one room. But for me, it was always a motivator that I felt like I saw a path to success in the future if I worked hard.
That's like an aside, but I've noticed, so for anyone who's not from like New York or Manhattan specifically, I guess, probably most of NYC, the city, things are small here. Like rooms are small. Things are close together. Like my hotel room, everything's close together. Like any apartment I've gone to or anything like that. It's just all the rooms are small. There's not very much horizontal space.
Right.
Everything's just built vertically. So yeah, that's a huge hallway for anywhere. Like,
right.
But that's a big one for New York City. Yeah. What was your word like when you were like 20? You remember?
Yeah, I went into journalism, so I was
You didn't think you were going to make
I didn't know.
Well, what is the journalist? It's usually they write a book, right? And it's bestseller.
Not necessarily. So I went into magazine journalism, which kind of isn't a thing anymore since magazines have been dying off. But you go into journalism and you expect to do the work and, put in the time. There's not that much balance if you want to, rise up the ladder, I guess, because it's really competitive. And then you rise up the ladder and you're expecting to, just like you said, see your editor-in-chief or publisher and, go to those Christmas parties at their huge brownstone in Brooklyn or wherever it is and aspire to that. I've been on Twitter a lot lately, and I see a lot of younger journalists. I sort of left the profession as a full-time worker, but a lot of younger journalists are screaming out like, I've been in this for 10 years. Like, when does my promotion come? Like, when do I start earning a living wage?
You're like this. Oh, honey. Yeah.
Well, that was the expectation. It was the expectation that you will get there. But now they're finding, with journalism, they're paying these kids pennies to write 10 articles or more a day. It's a really changed industry.
The kind of the BuzzFeedification of the industry, right?
Exactly.
Where it's like, pay. And this is, so I did a big breakdown on BuzzFeed, and I think BuzzFeed in particular was kind of like, it seemed fun. A lot of people wanted to work there. So basically, because everybody wants to work here and because you get to go viral and because you get to make a little bit of a name for yourself, you also can be expected to put out 10 articles a day or 3 videos a day or whatever, and just like, you know, grind and put out like this crazy output. At the same time, though, I'm going to say this. So I have another quote here from a different type of person, not a professor. This is more of like a business influencer bro, you know, like those guys, or Alex Ramosi, if you know who that is. He goes, at some point, everybody who wants to achieve great things realizes that balance is a myth. And he says the base word for mediocrity is medium, which is in the middle. It's balance, right? So if you're balanced, you're like kind of by definition mediocre, even though that's not how you would think of it, right? So that's, I guess, my next question, because I think we're talking about like, hey, in the journalism industry and all this, like they're really kind of overworking these young journalists, these kids, and they're definitely talking about it on TikTok, the Gen Z crew, which, you know, I think as an owner of a company, you'd be aware of in one kind of way, but in another kind of way, is it like, yeah, like maybe they need to just toughen up a little bit and realize that's what it is?
Well, I mean, the companies are struggling and trying to pivot and figure out what to do because the old media model has stopped working. And so the employees are feeling that. I mean, they're unionizing at places like Hearst and Condé Nast, trying to get, you know, fair wages. But yes, I mean, I will say that business bros, I don't really listen to a lot of their advice because they're in a particular place in their life.
Right.
And it's not indicative of where women are in a lot of places in their lives, or frankly, many people.
Right.
So I take that kind of advice and philosophizing with a grain of salt. That said, you know, you do have to have a drive if you want to succeed in a given career or as a founder.
Yeah.
So you do, you know, I say, a lot of people say, I left a 40-hour-a-week job. First of all, it wasn't 40 hours a week, but the saying goes, I left a 40-hour-a-week job so I could work 100,
right.
You know, so I could work 24 hours a day for myself.
Right.
And that is true, but it is, there are a lot of benefits, and there is a certain balance that comes with that you don't get from working for somebody else.
I think the main thing seems to be like the theme with maybe both of your guys' career tracks is that it seems to be like you were willing to put in the 60 hours, you're willing to work hard, you're willing to give up balance if it seemed like there was a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I think so to a degree, but I also kind of rant about work-life balance. And I think that there's this whole misnomer about it. And I wrote a book recently about our company and building an amazing culture that was based on fire department values, but going the corporate route where I made a lot of money, I got promotion. I did really well. And I always envisioned myself on the corporate conference call, like leading the earnings call, sitting in that big corner office and running a public company. And for some reason, I was swept up in the current of where it was taking me. I'm like, I'm going to be the fastest swimmer in that current and I'm going to outperform. But what I never really stopped to do is think about, what do I want?
Yeah.
Like, what really is success? And ultimately, when Rachel and I started our company, she said to me something along the lines of, we have to make sure that we're really giving people great work-life balance. And I'll use my one swear, but I said, fuck work-life balance.
Yeah.
Like it's all life. And the fact that people feel like they need to distinguish between the two, to me, is the problem.
Yeah.
You give your best, most alert, awake hours to the people at work. It's not to your family, not to the kids, not to whatever hobbies you have. It's to work. And if you don't love what you're doing and you're not working towards something and you don't feel part of something, that to me is kind of the worst case scenario for somebody.
I will say that is a little bit of it's a nice view to be able to have, right? If you're working to live, you don't get to say, what do I want in my life? Yeah. And there are a lot of people in a lot of different careers who are just struggling to get a living, to pay their rent, to get by. So it's a really like luxurious question to get to ask, you know, what do I really want out of my life? But I agree. I think work-life balance is a myth. Sometimes it's all work, sometimes it's all life, depending on what's going on in your life.
It's a chapters thing.
Yeah.
But nobody typically shows you what the options are or talks to you. You get thrown into something. And for me, I had an epiphany when I started my own business. I took a grueling trip to the West Coast. went on my own dime, went from being senior vice president of Macy's to lugging my own samples, actually falling down in the parking lot of a now defunct West Coast retailer, going into a meeting where the person I was supposed to meet with didn't show up, sent their assistant who was going to take notes and like let them know, and then flying back
hold on. It's just you and the assistant in there now?
Yeah, that was it. Like
you're like, I had some questions. Are you like their voice? Are you the hand of the king here? Yeah, what's going on?
Basically.
Life.
And I went from being a senior VP at Macy's to this little, an assistant at a regional store telling me that, oh, I don't really see it that way, or you don't understand our business. I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? And then flying back. But what I did is I took the red eye home, I took a shower, I did a little bit of work, took a nap, went to pick up my kids at their elementary school. Yeah. And when they saw daddy doing pickup, seeing the look on their faces running to me, I realized I had it all wrong. I was chasing the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. So that day I defined success as owning my calendar, working with the people I want to work with, doing the things that I want to do. And I realized I was just chasing the wrong thing. So even though I work really hard, there's a totally different balance to it.
I absolutely agree. As a founder, you get to choose those things. Yeah. Hopefully, if you own enough of your company, you get to choose those things. And it really is gratifying after you and I had a long time of working for other people and climbing that ladder.
Right. Yeah. Both of you guys were in like big corporate environments too, and I think that maybe describes a lot. Like I've never been in the biggest company I've been in is maybe 700 people. And then I've gone in and out of entrepreneurship. Yeah. And when I'm out of entrepreneurship, it's with, like right now I have a company, I'm at a company called Triple Whale that is maybe we have 120 people. Most of them are developers, so I have nothing to do with them.
We use Triple Whale.
Yeah, Triple Whale is fantastic. Yeah, a little subtle plug for Triple Whale there, if you're an e-commerce brand. But like, I think it's a huge company. To me, I'm like, we've got so many people. Sometimes I have a question, and not only do I not know the answer to the question, I don't even know who I'm supposed to ask the answer to.
That's startup life.
Yeah, right. And that's like, I guess it's startup life, but it's a lot of people there come from like, they're like, oh, this is so startup-y. And I'm like, I feel like it's huge. It feels corporate to me. So there's levels, but I think that a lot of probably people who are listening to this show are either kind of like me, semi-entrepreneurs, or they're entrepreneurs, or they're like high skill sort of workers, or high I don't know, thought workers type of people that are just generally interested in business and stuff. And I think a lot of them maybe work at other companies, are, in their 20s working through their career. So I think if like we kind of go back to framing that, and I think, because I think, ultimately, I don't want to over glorify entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? It does give you some control of your calendar, but it comes with a whole host of like, the food on the table is completely up to you, right? Keeping the lights on, keeping the roof over the head, it's all completely up to you. And I think some people are built for it, and that's fine, and there's a timing element and stuff like that. But I think that when you're younger, let me kind of land this thought. When you're younger, I don't think it's a bad idea to like work the corporate job at Macy's or at Thrive Global or wherever for a while to build up skills, network, connections. Like those are all things that are going to help if you ever go on the entrepreneurial journey. So I think that's probably where I want to like, when you're going through that and your calendar is not your own, what does balance look like? Should you even be seeking balance, or should you be thinking like, no, like I want to work towards something important, assuming that you do have like goals and aspirations. Like if your goal and aspiration is like, I just want to work as little as possible and then live, then that's what you should optimize for. But assuming you have some stuff you want to achieve, either you want to start your own business or you want to, get into that VP role or whatever, like what does it look like? Should you just grind for a company that ultimately could spit you out? I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah,
not from the corporate world as much.
Right. I don't think the adage of get there before your boss, stay after your boss, I think that's sort of gone after the pandemic with the different working hours. But I do think, when I was a young editor in magazines, I was always sort of too shy to bring my ideas to the table because you don't know if they're good, you don't know how they're going to be received, but it's all about ideas, and a lot of careers, definitely journalism. Mm-hmm. So, if I think the goal is if if you can make your boss's life easier and their boss's life easier, then you're winning. And sometimes that's with like bringing great ideas to the table that they might not have thought of. Sometimes it is doing, their busy work that needs to be done and someone needs to do it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think coming out of college and going straight into entrepreneurship, some people can succeed, but it's hard. And I do think you learn really amazing skills in working for corporations. I've worked for corporations and I've worked for a large startup, which is Thrive Global.
Yeah.
When I worked there, I think it was 5-6 years old. It was Series D. And a lot of the skills that I took working for the larger corporations, I could use there and sort of help, corral things. But also, there's a lot of red tape there that I was very happy to not have to deal with at a startup. So I think just get the most out of wherever you're working, like learn how the sausage is made, talk to the important people, and then, take that for yourself, whatever you do.
Yeah, collecting 3 things: industry knowledge, skills, and connections, right? Like,
and interpersonal skill,
right.
How to deal with a lot of different personalities.
Yeah, I don't know how somebody can just graduate or not graduate and start a company. I mean, to me, going into a company, that is the education. Like, that's what college should be, because you're learning those things. Yeah. By the time I started my own business, I knew everybody that I would be selling to.
Yeah.
I had done business with everybody I'd be competing against. And I knew exactly what the space was like. I had earned an expertise. I had made every mistake, and I got paid really well while doing it.
Yeah.
But I was always really inquisitive, trying to learn. And when I was called an entrepreneur, I kind of shuddered at the term. I hated it at the beginning because I always thought that that's like a reckless person who's just winging it. And I was like, everything that I had done to that point was so purposeful about putting myself in the position where I could hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. I was working on Hugimals World and these products for maybe 4.5 years while I still had full-time jobs.
Yeah.
I was interviewing therapists and occupational therapists. I was doing, research on similar products in the landscape and the market. And, my launch story is interesting because I didn't necessarily expect to become an entrepreneur. I've always sort of had the streak in me. Years ago, I had a newsletter where I interviewed notable artists and creatives about the things that they were not paid to promote, and that was doing really well. I was starting to monetize it, but I just couldn't keep it up with a full-time job. The balance just wasn't there, and so I let that go. But this, I was working on. I initially licensed the idea to a company because I thought I would just keep my full-time jobs. That company was bought by a media company that didn't put out any physical products. So I had the product of my dreams, tens of thousands of units, and they were just, like, here you go, like do what you will with
it's
this.
Such a common story.
It is, right? And so,
especially with physical products, it's like I have a bunch of stuff in my my spare bedroom.
So I had, I could throw them in the ocean or I could launch a company, and at that point. Speaking of research, I had done a pilot in children's hospitals across the country because I needed to validate the efficacy in a place where kids and adults were very stressed out. That feedback from that pilot was just so incredible. They were saying they were giving Hugimals to the kids they call the code bear kids, and I didn't know what that was. If they can't say code red over a loudspeaker when a child is needing intervention or, needs help, they say code bear, and they would administer these Hugimals to those kids and say they would change their perception of what was happening in the room and calm them within minutes. So I heard that feedback. I was like, okay, these work. I'm going to leave my job and start a company. So my journey wasn't necessarily like always knowing I would be a founder, and I'm a first-time founder. I have never launched a consumer product before. I am learning it as I go, but I feel like, to your point, a lot of the skills that I learned are helping. For me, my unfair advantage was I knew how to pitch press because I had been on the other side of those pitches, deleting most of them from the PR people. So I knew what to do and what not to do. So I used that unfair advantage to launch, get a ton
you
of
probably had some
press.
connections.
I had some connections, but the magazine the industry changes so much that there's a lot of turnover. So yes, I would say to other founders, use everything you have, use any unfair advantage.
I would say that almost every brand that I see doing well right now, and really I see a lot of physical product brands. So keeping really into that, we could even limit it to that, but I'm sure it's true in tech as well. All of them that I see doing really well right now is I would say they all have some kind of like unfair advantage or leg up or moat. Like it's like they already have a moat on launch is what I say. So like for me it was a similar thing. Mine was a service, but like I just was connected from having worked in the industry for a while. I like got fired from an agency and I was like, oh, I know enough people that I can get some freelance work and maybe start my own agency, right? For you is like you kind of knew all the people. Connections is oftentimes what it is. It's like you have a leg up on launch. Those are the brands that are doing well. The brands where it's like, oh, I just want to, try and develop this product and run, Facebook ads or Google ads. It's like, yeah, good luck now. Like it maybe 2016, 18, that would have worked. But now that's going to be a really tough way to go about it. So I want to ask this. So I think that a lot of people feel overworked, and the advice that all of TikTok, social media, like young. So I think of TikTok as Gen Z as social media, even though everybody's on there. But a lot of the like advice or things people say there are like, don't give away your life to a company that doesn't care about you and will let you go in the next round of layoffs if they have to. And that is to a degree true, right? Like I think maybe there was one time in this country where companies had a little more loyalty to their employees. I don't know if that's really true. Like, I don't know history that well. Or people would work at the same company for 30 years and they could make a living doing that and they could retire doing that and stuff like that. But now it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. And so I don't hate that advice of like, don't give your life away to a company that doesn't care about you and will kind of chew you up and spit you out. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of people who are working super hard for that company, even though they know that's the case, because it's like, I'm working crazy hard and crazy hours just to do enough to like hopefully keep my job.
I mean, a company is people, and people always talk about a company like it's this living thing.
Yeah.
The company doesn't care. Of course, the company doesn't care about you. It's paperwork in Delaware.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a company is. It's all about the people. And I had my best job and my worst job inside the same company, and the difference was the people.
Yeah.
So my loyalty belongs to people, not to a company or a job or a product. And it's to my family also. But I always look at it as it's about the people. And as people move around, like you can move around. But if you're thinking about how do you gain those unfair advantages for later in life and you're purposeful about that, like that's where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been torn on this because I have, been of the generation that like you work hard, you get there early, like you don't have any balance. And that sort of was embedded in my brain. And then
especially in journalism.
And a lot of industries though.
Yeah.
And yes, I started, when I left, and when I started looking at all these TikToks, there's a girl named Laura. I can't remember her last name. She has a really famous, like over millions of followers on TikTok, where she talks about corporate life and what corporations want to get out of you and striking your, balance there. And I started watching her and others, and I was like, they're right. I love that this, Gen Z they're starting to change things in the workplace. You don't have to get there before your boss and leave after. It's not about the time that you put in. It's about how smart you work. And, to our point earlier, take what you need from that job. You set your boundaries. You say, I can't, work after this time or whatever it is. It is people, but I've learned amazing things from people, but those people sometimes can't even control if you get laid off or not. Sometimes they're laid off. So, even though it's a lot of things are out of your control, you may get laid off. You don't know what your future is there. So just take what you need. If that means working super hard and earning that promotion and getting to work on projects that will be valuable to your career down the line, do that. If you're not getting anywhere, then strike those boundaries and work less. I think it's not like a black and white thing necessarily, but I do love that this generation is really changing how everyone thinks about work.
Yeah, we make it really clear. I mean, I have so many young people who work in the company, and the speech that I like to give is, I don't care when you come in, I don't care when you leave, I don't care how hard you're working. I care about the impact that you have. I care if you make us better. Like, I want people who can challenge me. I want fresh ideas. And if you have an impact on the business, you're going to do great with us.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did when I led teams and what I do now.
Yeah.
I think that is like the common, like, look, I don't care when you do your work as long as you get your work done type of thing, right? And I like that you're calling it impact instead of like get your work done.
Right.
Because I think there's the I don't care when you do your work as long as you get your work done statement. It's a trap, especially in the like remote work world we have now. Because I'm like, for the most part, you will have, if you're in any kind of like position of like high thought work, you're controlling things that are important. If you're in marketing like I am, or wherever, buying, whatever, there's always more work to do than there is time. Right. There's always 100 hours of work to do in a week. Yep. Right. So you could not sleep and maybe get it all done. Because that statement, I think, is specifically a trap of like, I don't care when you do it as long as you get it done.
Just like unlimited vacation's a trap.
Yeah. Well, I have that here. What's the right amount of PTO? But yeah, no. And I think even the impact thing, it's a better way to frame it and say, as long as you have impact. But what about in periods of like, I think where this gets stressful is in periods right now where you're seeing a lot of companies not hit their sales projections, not hit their growth projections, and a team member is sitting there saying, well, I know they don't care about when I work or how much I work or whatever, as long as I'm having the impact, but I could work super hard and it seems like I really can't control what's actually happening here. And then I think that's when they kind of either some people disengage entirely and they're just like, I guess like I'm gonna have to find something else, I'm probably gonna get fired anyway, or they double down and they start working 80 hours a week to try and do something about it, try and take some kind of control. And at the end of the day, it's just some sort of macro environment that they can't really control. How do you deal with that as a manager?
I mean, disengaging has no place with us.
Yeah,
we get great results and we get terrible results. Like that is just what happens. Like if we close 30% of the deals that we go after, that's a great hit rate. I want people who, when they don't get something done, they don't hide it. They don't get dejected. They think about why they didn't get it. They learn something from it. They come back with fresh ideas. They try to go back at it. And if it doesn't work, then it just doesn't work. And we're not going to close them all. But it's about just being able to really communicate throughout the organization so that everybody knows what's happening. And if somebody doesn't get the result, somebody else might be able to, or maybe we're just trying to sell something that consumer doesn't want or our retailers don't want, and that's okay. Like we just have to keep moving forward, making progress, but there is nothing worse than disengaging.
I think what happens is there's a level of disconnection. So when you said like maybe we're just trying to sell something that the consumer doesn't want or the retailer doesn't want, I think that what happens is sometimes it's like the person who's there trying to sell it, they might realize that. They might be like, oh, I have a task, a sales quota to hit that just is, no matter how good I am at this, it seems kind of unhittable. But then they also are like, is that just the wrong mindset to have? Should I be like, no, it's hittable, but like, I'm trying to sell something that just doesn't have the product market fit to do this much volume. But the fear is that the supervisor won't see it that way because, or that the, owner or whatever won't see it that way because they're two levels disconnected. Right. So, and that, either they disengage and are like, I'm just going to get fired anyway, or they try super hard, work super hard, give up their work-life balance, and then get fired anyway. And that's the fear everyone has, right? That's like the worker, I think, complaint on TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all about solutions at the end of the day. Like anybody can bring back the problems. Anybody can say this thing isn't going to sell. Okay, why isn't it going to sell? What else could we do? What would sell? Like what would you need? Bringing that info back to the company is so incredibly valuable because if you have a sales force out there selling the wrong thing, a year from now, you're going to be in bad shape and you may be doing layoffs. So having a culture where people feel empowered to come back with that information, as long as they're doing it in a way that is factual and solution-based, like those are the people that get rewarded.
Yeah.
Having been an employee and a founder, I think a lot of responsibility lies on the leadership to understand what is feasible and, what tasks and goals are giving their employees. Because, I've been in situations where the leadership of the company doesn't know necessarily what direction it wants to go in. And so how is it, the responsibility of the employees to necessarily solve that? So, I think that's part of that whole reckoning that's happening now, Gen Z with work life and office life in general. They're not taking a lot of the stuff, they're rethinking a lot of the stuff that we just, took. And I think that's a good thing. I think rather than having your employees solve an unknown problem, a lot of the responsibility should rest with the leadership.
Well, and I think, to sort of like frame it for the team, like if you're a team member that is responsible for some kind of performance. So, I think sales, marketing.
Yes.
But,
that's
if you're
quantifiable.
Right. or I think even in journalism, I think a lot of them are now sort of responsible for how many views they get on their article, how much,
Yes,
right?
that is also quantifiable.
Right, and but sometimes there's a lot of elements of that performance that are pretty outside of your control as well.
Sure.
So I think that what the struggle for the supervisor or for the managers is this a platform problem or a macroeconomic problem or a person problem?
Yeah.
And it can be hard to figure that out. So I think if you're a person who's in that situation and you're like, look, this company doesn't care about me, I could work super hard and they could steal. It's like, you got to work super hard. You also have to make sure everybody knows your supervisors, the people above you know you're working super hard. You have to be very a big part of your work should probably be dedicated to like communicating
More
what
people
you're
should
doing,
know
showing
that.
your work. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I look at that as exceeding expectations. Like that is the key to success and getting ahead. If you exceed people's expectations in the company, you're going to do great.
Right. Well, but can you exceed expectations if you miss your sales target by 30% consistently?
It depends. I think you can. I have.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
I have. Yeah.
And that's a good.
Yeah.
So I think that's a thing that a lot of people in those positions are like, how could I possibly exceed expectations? Right. And they maybe shell up and they're like, I don't know. Like they're probably just mad at me. I'm probably on the chopping block. They have all these like internal dialogue things that might not even be true. But I think it's important to know like you could be missing your sales target by 30% consistently every quarter and still be exceeding expectations. What does that look like?
I mean, for me, it's about the communication that comes back. It's about understanding it. Why are we missing it? Because it's either a matter of aptitude or it's the products. And there's not much else that's in there. So you look at all the different factors that it can be, and you really look to break it apart. But a great person's going to come back, and what would exceed my expectation is the person who's down 30% comes back with a write-up and says, this is why our product is the wrong color, it's the wrong price, this is what's happening in the competitive market, our advertising's been ineffective, and comes back with things that we can actually look at and make some decisions for the company of what we could do to improve the results. Yeah. Like that's exceeding expectation. Disconnecting is down 30 is typically what people do. Hiding is what people do.
Yep.
That is kind of what that's below expectation, and expectation is sort of like just taking it and grinding it out, but bringing it back and talking about it and figuring out a way to improve the results. That is the only way.
Yeah.
I think it's down to does the person care or not? I always, when I hired, I was like, some people, they want the job, but they don't really care, and that's okay. There's probably another job where they would care more about. But even as a founder, when I'm working with people, I want people who like care about our mission and what we're doing and believe in it, and don't necessarily make it their whole lives, because that's not healthy. But to that point, is that person going to help you get learnings about why something didn't work, right. Or are they just going to say this didn't work?
And it's a double-edged sword. I have a chapter in my book about.
Yeah, it is, because you're like I can bring you learnings about why it doesn't work, but do those sound like excuses to you?
Right. Yeah, and that is. And the other thing, I mean, I wrote a chapter about how we find people who really care, because I feel like I can teach people to do a job. I can't teach anybody to care. Like you either do or you don't. Absolutely. And for us, if you're somebody that doesn't care, you probably won't work with us. But people who care, who then don't get the results they want, can run hot and cold. So you have that double-edged sword of an emotional workforce that may act out more or be more emotional when things don't go their way. So I'd rather manage that than manage people who don't care or are disengaged.
And people who care can work within work hours and not devote their entire life to the company. I want to make that clear.
I think, look, really logically, we're using this example of somebody who's down 30% in their sales target consistently over a few quarters. Are you going to, should you take time away from making your calls and doing your follow-ups to do that write-up about why it's not working? Maybe that's the extra time you should put in, right? Like maybe that's the, you don't have to put in 50 or 60 hours a week just trying to grind out more calls and do more when you're kind of banging your head against a wall anyway. Maybe you make the calls that you're supposed to make, but you spend the extra time doing that. Like, we need to reproject this, and here's what I think the solutions are.
Yeah, right? I mean, for us, success is all about things that we can scale.
Yeah.
And those things could be ideas, it could be various learnings, it could be products. I mean, we move over 1 million boxes per month to major retailers. We've sold over 30 million of our little waffle makers. Those things came out of ideas that somebody brought back to the company, had some conviction in. In the case of the mini waffle maker, my wife said, I think this thing would be adorable. And I said, it'll never sell. But we try things, we try to learn, and then bring that back to the company and figure out if you can make something good, that's a great starting point for making something great.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit you guys with we're starting to wrap here. So I'm going to hit you guys with just a few stats from some surveys. So 57% of Americans took a vacation in the past year, like a vacation from their work in the past year, which is the highest since 2009. So if we measure work-life balance in vacations, we're doing well, I guess. However, 60% say they work during vacations, and 37% say they log in multiple times a day during vacations, which is up from 19% in 2021. So I think that the connectedness of remote work is having an effect too.
Yeah, I mean, I am horrible when it comes to vacations.
I am
However,
too. Yeah.
I work with my wife. We're together 24/7. And when we travel for work, we make time for fun. But I don't encourage my people to work that way. And now being part of a public French company, month of August comes around and they're gone.
So this is one thing that some companies and some countries are doing is we have a summer break. The whole company is off for this week or for this month or whatever, which seems crazy to me. How could a whole company take a week off? Like, like if I go to Walmart, they're like, no, there's nobody here. It's, it's first week of July. We're all off, which is kind of wild. Like, I think maybe that's just an American culture thing where I think that's kind of wild because I think it is a little more normal. Other places, some places are trying 4-day work weeks as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things that just seem to be kind of a badge of honor. Like, I stayed up all night. I pulled an all-nighter on this, and now I'm ineffective the next day. Or I didn't take vacation, and I'm getting burned out. Mm-hmm. We look at health comes first, family comes second, and your work is third. Mm-hmm. And if you really manage those things, your life should be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, vacations have always been hard for me, and I'm glad more people are taking them. I agree. Remote work is posing its own set of challenges with seeming, online all the time, or, I think it's more about that communication of maybe what you're doing and how well you're doing. That's something that people probably need more of when they're not working. But at Thrive, I wrote a book about micro steps. They are science-backed, tiny steps that you can take to improve your mental and physical well-being. Some of those are incredible. My favorite one was not to check my phone for 1 minute after I woke up in the morning because you want to set your intention of what you want out of the day, not what other people want from you.
Yep.
Did you get like an alarm clock? How did you do that?
Yeah, I timed 1 minute. It's like it can be as little.
Like
as
my
1 minute.
phone is my alarm, so you don't count like the alarm part.
No,
or?
I didn't. I timed it like a minute, 2 minutes. I would shower basically.
Gotcha.
I would just take a shower and then check my phone.
Gotcha.
But you can time it with like a manual.
Like,
we do have a manual alarm clock.
Yes, a minute.
But yeah, those steps are amazing, but they can only go so far if the culture of work is broken.
Yeah.
So if you're working at a corporation that expects more from you than is healthy to give, then that's a problem. People are so stressed out. I mean, that's one reason why I created Hugimals. I was having a lot of stress from years of working in unstable industries.
Yeah.
And, I was trying a weighted blanket at night to calm my racing mind, which I had. I couldn't fall asleep. Those were too smothering. So I started looking for other tools. I found some weighted plush, but they were not aesthetic. They were not heavy enough for adults. I started researching. I couldn't find what I wanted, so I created it. And now over half of our customers are adults, not kids. It's a weighted stuffed animal.
Yeah.
It looks like a stuffed animal. I launched it in the toy industry thinking that, even though I don't have kids, I made it for myself.
Anybody just like build like a fort of them
no,
and just
it's
get
adult.
in there?
Yes. People have been asking us for a much heavier one, and we have different weights.
I feel like you're compromising my job security at home.
From the stress relief.
Being the weighted animal to cuddle with. That's
Everyone needs a hug
that's my
sometimes.
job
That's
security.
my main role.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone needs a hug sometimes.
Yeah, I feel triggered by this.
The other thing besides vacation is also time to do good. So we give everybody, we do kind of a normal vacation thing. I think everybody gets 3 weeks. I don't even know. But we give 12 paid days off per year, same day every month as a company where we work in our communities or a food bank or take education. And we do it together, and it builds some camaraderie. camaraderie, and it feels like we're doing something great together. And when we put it into place, it was kind of radical.
Yeah.
We have not missed a beat on productivity. It works great for us, and people feel really good about what they're doing.
Yeah, I think, my initial response to that is I think if you can't take one day a month and do no work day, like regular work, there's probably too much.
Yeah.
You're probably doing so much that you're not doing certain things well.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you should probably be doing less and doing it better.
Absolutely. That's usually the case.
Right.
I mean,
well, and because as you said that, I was like, yeah, one day off a month would be hard for me. It's because my days are packed with calls.
Right.
So I had to would have to take all those calls and try and redistribute them. But all the other days are also packed with calls.
Right.
So I would end up with 7, 8 p.m. days, right?
Yeah. The key is scheduling it out. If you schedule it in the future and you just hold it, that's true. You find places to put the other stuff.
Yeah.
You just can't do it spur of the moment.
Yeah, for sure. So couple other stats here. 63% of vacation takers are taking, of the people who took the vacations, 63% of them are saying that they're taking shorter than usual vacations, right? So their vacations are truncated. There's also on apps like Microsoft Teams, and this one was specifically Microsoft Teams, so I won't speak to Slack, but Microsoft Teams has seen a 42% rise in chats per person, chats per user after normal working hours. So the in-betweens.
Since when?
Since 2021. So in the last 3 years.
It was pretty bad before then.
Yeah.
That's been creeping up for years. And the BlackBerry.
Well, and I think part of flexibility is some people might kind of just work a later stagger. You know what I mean? Like they might kind of start at noon because they got to get the kids to school in the morning or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think some of that is just normal flexibility. If we're saying normal working hours are between here and here, it's like, well, if we all work remote, that's just normal isn't normal, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends what normal is and what's needed. I mean, doing global business now, when 9 o'clock comes around here, our Hong Kong office is coming into work and all of a sudden the emails kick up and we're talking to them. And it's tough. You need to figure out the balance in whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. And then one of the most surprising stats that they found when they asked the managers after surveying team members was one of the most surprising bits of research we found while creating our stat roundup was this. Managers can't tell the difference between people who actually work 80 hours a week and those who just pretend to work 8 hours a week.
That makes sense to me.
So moral of the story, you don't need to work 80 hours a week. Just get good at being seen, know?
When
it's good
the
at being
pandemic
around.
happened, a lot of people, women especially, but everybody were saying, women with children had a really rough time, but the shift in culture of working from home, it really helped a lot of people do what they need to do, like do their laundry, do errands, go to the doctor, that kind of thing. They were still getting their work done and still making an impact, a lot of them. But that idea of, hours of working has sort of been dissipated.
Yeah, the bigger problem is that managers are looking at hours or
Exactly.
wondering who's working the longer hours.
Yeah, they're never going to be able to tell.
It's an outdated,
to that point.
Outdated.
Yeah,
Why
well,
care
I
about
think
it?
it comes down to, are we hitting our when we're hitting the numbers, everybody's happy. It doesn't matter how much we work. It's when we're not hitting our numbers, things get dicey. You know what I mean? Okay, and I also if I were just a person who's like, hey, how do I get better work-life balance? I ask Google that stuff. It's not helpful, in case you're wondering. It says things like, manage your time wisely.
Oh, that's good advice.
That's all you need to do. Manage your time wisely. Prioritize your happiness, right? I think you've written a book on such things.
We have given actionable steps that you can take. My entire career, even in, when I worked in magazines, I talked a lot about mental health, and that's because I grew up in an immigrant family. My family immigrated here from Russia to Ohio when I was 2. And so the prevailing philosophy was, if you're not bleeding or dying, pick yourself up. What do you have to complain about? We moved to this country, not for you to complain. So I think a lot of immigrants, have that sort of sense. So mental health was not discussed. I was struggling. I had nowhere to take that. So I read magazines when I was a teenager, and they sort of showed a different way to be and a different way to, you can talk about things that you can't talk about at home necessarily. So I vowed to do that for other women and girls, and worked in women's magazines, for the most part, talked about mental health. It's the fact that people are talking about it so much more, and we're even talking about work-life balance in any kind of meaningful way, it means there is a shift in a positive direction. And I think companies are or should be taking steps to facilitate that balance for their employees, because they don't get the best out of them just by making them work 80 hours a week.
Yeah. I think one of the best frameworks I've heard personally was that we've all heard maybe the story of like putting the rocks in the jar or something like that, or the analogy of like, if you've got like sand and some little rocks, some little pebbles and some big rocks, try to put them all in a jar. If you put the sand in there first, then the other stuff won't fit in there. But if you put the big rocks in first and you let the other things kind of like work around the big rocks, then everything fits, and you can fit everything into your life if you just put the big stuff in first.
I've never heard that analogy before.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So, but you can fit everything in your life, which sounds great, except for, at least today, and maybe this has always been the case, but at least today, and this is one of the best frameworks I've ever heard for this, somebody said, there are too many big rocks. There are more big rocks than fit in the jar now. So you kind of just have to accept that as a frame for life. Like there are too many things that have a legitimate a demand on your time. This opportunity, your family, your health, your work, like and like those are just a few things, right? Eating, should you meal prep? How much should you worry about politics and being involved in your community? How much should you, like there's just too many things that do have a legitimate demand on your time. There are too many big rocks to fit in the jar, and you have to just decide, yep, some of those I'm just not going to put in there, or I'm going to make them into a little rock, and I'm not going to care that much about them.
Got to be more selective, more purposeful about it, and you don't need to have an opinion on absolutely everything.
Right, yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, God forbid that, you have an uneducated opinion on everything. So, cool. This has been a fun one, guys. Hugimals, I mean, if somebody wants...
Want a hug?
Quinn, yeah, I would like.
They're made to actually hug back, so that's why it feels so
like
comforting.
If I just put them,
and they're heavy enough
like
for adults to use. Yeah,
that's nice.
You get a hug at the end of your podcast.
Yes, yeah. It was stressful. Had a stressful morning. Hugimals.com or what?
Hugimalsworld.
Hugimalsworld.com. Get a weighted plush.
Yep.
It's nice.
Thank you.
The book, A Dash of Good, available everywhere you buy books.
Yeah, we're actually sold out right now on Amazon, coming back soon, but Amazon bestseller in the first week out, basically.
Amazing.
And we'll be back in stock soon. Kindle's out there. Audible's going up this week.
Nice.
And and buydash.com is our website for products.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you both for being here. If you're still with us, comment, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, leave a review. Do whatever the people tell you to do on the platform that you're listening or watching on. This has been Dark Mode.